The ladies of the View are having a conniption fit over a Catholic football player being Catholic out loud and everything. It's odious, but we enjoy watching the video because they're so funny. So we're going to watch that together. Also, Mitt Romney is having his own conniption fit over the president's trial. He's really upset that Republicans are showing support for the Republican nominee for president. What am I missing here, Mitt? Oh, that's right. You're not really a Republican anymore. Also, great throwdowns in the House of Representatives. You've been waiting for Republicans to show a little backbone. Well, Elise Stefanik showed a hell of a lot of backbone, smacking down that Representative Dan Goldman, and you're going to see every bit of it coming up right now. I'm Larry O'Connor. You can call me Larry. We are live right now, rumbling along at Rumble. Please join us there live whenever you can, because it's a party, and the people in the live chat are, well, I don't know, they're lunatics. I think they have a drinking game going on. Anytime I say something funny, they take a shot, which means they're snockered by the end of our show, right? Am I right? I think I'm funnier than I am. If you're not watching us live, though, we appreciate your support. And all we ask is that you give us a quick like and a subscribe. Costs you nothing, but we reap the benefits from it because it forces Google and all those other social media platforms to push our stuff further into the algorithm. And that helps everybody involved because we're trying to get the message out. We're trying to win an election. We're trying to save our country for our children and their children. That's all that's at stake. So give us the like, give us the subscription, and join in the fun in the comments section. The comments have really been rolling in lately, so thank you for that. It's commencement address season. As you know, we focused on Jerry Seinfeld's graduation speech that he gave at Duke last week. Now we want to bring you Harrison Butker. Now he is a Pro Bowl, Super Bowl champion kicker for the Kansas City Chiefs, and he was right there in Kansas. Yes, I know Kansas City is in Missouri, but it's all the same thing. He was at Benedictine College. Now, this is a Catholic college. Harrison Butker is a practicing and professing Catholic. So no one should be surprised if during his speech to the graduates from this Catholic college, this practicing Catholic sounded kind of Catholic.
For the ladies present today, congratulations on an amazing accomplishment. You should be proud of all that you have achieved to this point in your young lives. I want to speak directly to you briefly because I think it is you, the women, who have had the most diabolical lies told to you. How many of you are sitting here now about to cross this stage and are thinking about all the promotions and titles you are going to get in your career? Some of you may go on to lead successful careers in the world, but I would venture to guess that the majority of you are most excited about your marriage and the children you will bring into this world. I can tell you that my beautiful wife, Isabel, would be the first to say that her life truly started when she began living her vocation as a wife and as a mother. I'm on this stage today and able to be the man I am because I have a wife who leans into her vocation. I'm beyond blessed with the many talents God has given me, but it cannot be overstated that all of my success is made possible because a girl I met in band class back in middle school would convert to the faith, become my wife, and embrace one of the most important titles of all, homemaker. She's the primary educator to our children. She's the one who ensures I never let football or my business become a distraction from that of a husband and father. She is the person that knows me best at my core, and it is through our marriage that, Lord willing, we will both attain salvation. I say all of this to you because I have seen it firsthand, how much happier someone can be when they disregard the outside noise and move closer and closer to God's will in their life. Isabel's dream of having a career might not have come true, but if you asked her today if she has any regrets on her decision, she would laugh out loud without hesitation and say, heck no.
Have you seen anything more incredibly wholesome and wonderful? Seriously, I mean, especially considering what we've been seeing on college campuses for the last couple of weeks or months or really years. I mean, middle school band camp? Seriously? And they're still together and they're happy. And here's a husband, a football player, breaking down in tears at the thought of his love for his wife and the devotion that she has shown him. Who can't love that? Who can't embrace that? Who can't celebrate that? These women. These women hated it. These women spent a lot of time screaming like banshees about it. So let's hear what they had to say.
So the NFL released a statement that he gave this speech in his personal capacity, and they do not, the NFL does not share his views. So, you know, listen, I like when people say what they need to say. He's at a Catholic college. Yeah. He's a staunch Catholic. These are his beliefs, and he's welcome to them. I don't have to believe him. Right. I don't have to accept them. The ladies that were sitting in that audience do not have to accept them. The same way we want respect when Colin Kaepernick takes a knee. Right. We want to give respect to people whose ideas are different from ours, because the man who says he wants to be president, you know who? Yeah. He says the way to act is to take away people's right to say how they feel. We don't want to be that. We don't want to be those people. So I'm okay with him saying whatever he says. And the women who are sitting there, if they take his advice, good for them, they'll be happy. If they don't, good for them, they'll be happy a different way. That's my attitude.
All right. So, and thank you, Newsbusters, for the clip there. I appreciate it. Let's break that down for a minute, because it sure sounds like Whoopi Goldberg is acting very free speechy. But then she's got the gotcha moment there to the NFL on Colin Kaepernick and to Donald Trump. First of all, the only president in my recent memory who's trying to take away people's right to free speech is the current president, who's censored people on social media and in media in general for, you know, complaining about the vaccine or asking questions about the vaccine or about masking or about social distancing or about his son's laptop. Okay, so get that one straight. I'm not familiar with Donald Trump trying to keep people from speaking their mind or using their First Amendment rights. Number one. Number two, there's a huge difference here between Colin Kaepernick taking a knee during the Star-Spangled Banner and what Harrison Butker just did at a college graduation. And you know what the difference is. Of course you know. What Colin Kaepernick did, he did in his football uniform, on the job, in the stadium at the beginning of a game. Of course, the NFL has a right to say, you're representing us, you're representing our team, you're representing our company and our brand, and that's not how we want to be represented, number one. But number two, the NFL didn't do that. This whole legend that's been created around Colin Kaepernick, oh, they silenced him, they punished him, they didn't do any such thing. Colin Kaepernick was allowed to do it the entire season, and other players as well. I wish the NFL had said something. They waited until the offseason to reiterate their rules and make them more stringent and forceful and come up with a compromise with the Players Association. But they've created this mythology that Colin Kaepernick was punished. He wasn't. He should have been, but he wasn't. But meanwhile, yeah, the NFL has actually issued a statement condemning Harrison Butker for what he said in his private capacity as a faithful Catholic at a Catholic college. And here's the best part. This statement came from the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at the NFL. And apparently diversity doesn't include being a faithful Christian. Also, the NFL neglects to put out a statement when one of their players is busted for, you know, beating up on their wives or girlfriends. They just stay silent and shuffle their feet on the floor, staring up at the ceiling and saying, oh, we don't comment on our players' personal situations. We're just going to let this play out in the legal system. So there you go, football players. Go ahead and beat up on your girlfriend, and the NFL won't say a damn thing about it. But you express an opinion that is in keeping with mainstream Orthodox Christianity around the world and has been so for millennia, and you're going to get condemned by the NFL. Good to know where they stand. But the ladies of the View weren't done. We now have Christian criticism from Sarah Haynes. You know, she's right up there with St. Augustine and Thomas Aquinas in her understanding of Christian theology, scripture, and tradition.
So I agree with you and I disagree with you.
That's okay.
So I agree with you that freedom, in the spirit of freedom of speech, I don't want people shut down or fired for things they're willing to say. Yeah. I will break with you on the comparison to Colin Kaepernick for this reason. Colin Kaepernick was standing up for the rights of many and saying in a social justice moment, this is a reminder that we're not there yet. What this man is doing is not just a devout Catholic. This is someone who's practicing something called the traditional Latin Mass, which is divergent from the majority of Catholics. It's compared to being cult-like and extremist like some religions in the Middle East and Asia.
Oh, my God. Oh, and I literally mean, oh, my God. The traditional Latin Mass is cult-like and compared like some of the extreme religions in the Middle East. You mean like Orthodox Christianity in the Middle East? You mean like the Assyrian Church or the multiple rites of the Catholic Church that have an affiliation with Rome that are in the Middle East and in the East in general? Is that what you mean? Or are you likening this to radical Islamic terrorism? I believe she's likening it to terrorism. The traditional Latin Mass, Ms. Haynes, up until 50 years ago, was also known as the Catholic Mass and had been so for about 1,000 years, literally until about 50 years ago. And yes, it is still practiced today with the full, well, maybe not the full support of Rome, but tacit support from Rome. This current Pope, he's not a huge fan, but he hasn't banned it. And it's certainly not cult-like, but it's this kind of anti-Catholic bigotry. Are you hearing this, ABC News? Bigotry that you just allowed your employee to espouse on your show that led to Christopher Wray's FBI under the leadership of Merrick Garland to investigate Americans going to traditional Latin Mass as though they were extremist terrorists in this country. It's funny how she compares this to the Middle East, because if she had just said what she said about Catholics, if she had said that about Muslims, she'd be off the air. All right, I'm going to let you finish here, because now she's going to lecture all of us about how to be a proper Catholic. Oh, no, how to be a proper Christian writ large.
So this is a very extreme religion, and what bothers me about that as a Christian is that when people abuse Christianity, they often not only cherry pick from the Bible, they misinterpret and lie by omission, by taking out parts that would have explained something a little better. So what I can say to him as a Christian is if you're using this to oppress a people or hold them down, you're not walking with Jesus. If you are using the religion, if you are more obsessed with the religious rituals and practices than you are with the word of Jesus, you're not walking with Jesus. And if you're using it for the judgment of others and as a weapon to beat people down, you're also not walking with Jesus. So I would really encourage him to find the best parts of faith and not diverge into extremist beliefs.
Well, there you go, everybody. That's the gospel according to Sarah. Apparently, Jesus never judged anybody. Okay. Might want to have an examination of the gospels there.
He will one day.
Sorry, Kevin?
Jesus will judge a lot of people one day.
There could be a lot of judging going on. But I also think he had plenty to say in the gospels when he was separating those sheep and goats. I think there was plenty going on there. And by the way, so did the epistles. We're full of a lot of judgments, full of a lot of the roles of men and women in walking the Christian path. Lots of descriptions of what sinful behavior would keep one from the kingdom of God. But listen, again, I'm not trying to pontificate. I'm merely bringing analysis to the table. Sarah's the one who's telling you how a Christian is supposed to think and behave. And that's quite a platform there on The View, ABC News, for her to do such a thing.
If this is his belief system, if there are many Catholics who are staunch this way and don't
actually a small percentage go into the Latin Mass.
I'm just telling you, there are many people who believe this way. And I'm simply saying, rather than write a petition to get him fired because
Don't
this
get him
is
fired.
well, that's what I'm talking
Pope
about.
discourages it, just so you know, in the Catholic Church, the Pope
But it
diverges
doesn't-
from this belief.
It does.
There you go. He's also telling us about what the Pope thinks. I appreciate that as a Catholic, to have a non-Catholic tell me what the Pope thinks. Listen, I don't want to get into a debate here about the traditional Latin Mass, but let me just tell you this, okay? Because I do know things about my faith. I know some things about Harrison Butker's faith. If you are a Catholic in America and you prefer the traditional Latin Mass, you are 100%, 1,000% a Catholic in good standing. You are a Christian in good standing with the Catholic Church in America and with the Vatican, period. She does not know what she's talking about. And to compare it to a cult is so odious and so disgusting and so despicable. I can't even begin. And did you notice that Whoopi keeps using this word, staunch Catholic, staunch Catholic? Can you please tell me what this is the problem with Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi being the highest profile Catholics in America? Because they're pro-abortion. They're pro-LGBT behavior. So now this is the bar for people in the media like Whoopi Goldberg to think, oh, that's what a Catholic is. And anyone who thinks that that kind of behavior is sinful, they're staunch Catholics. No, actually, they're just Catholics. The staunch Catholics who believe abortion is a sin. Okay, guys. There's nothing staunch about that. But this is our problem. When Joe Biden keeps saying that he's such a devout Catholic and he goes up and presents himself for communion every week, when it is 100% sinful for him to do so, then it drags the rest of the church down. That's why the bishops actually need to step up and do something about it. All right, let's move now to Alyssa Farah, who had something to say about Harrison Butker. But their heads were exploding over this football player, a kicker even. He's not even a real football player. I'm kidding. I'm a joke.
And what I found is there were things I agreed with. There was a lot I disagreed with. Galatians tells us the whole of the law is fulfilled as this: love your neighbor as thyself. He chose to target the LGBTQ community.
Yeah.
He thought there was a way that you could speak with humility about your beliefs that you stand for, but you can't alienate certain parts of scripture. I have this huge issue with this trad wife homemaker thing. What a remarkable privilege. If you get to marry an NFL kicker who wins the Super Bowl, you too might get to be a homemaker in this economy. But also, he ignores the Proverbs 31 woman who goes and she's a leader in her community. She barters in the streets. She earns. She contributes to her household. I see this so much, the melding of political with the faith that ignores half of the Bible and just picks the convenient.
This whole idea that what they heard from Harrison Butker about his wife, for Alyssa Farah to then say, oh, but what about in Proverbs when women go out and barter, they contribute to the family? Everything that Harrison Butker said was how his wife contributes to the family without having to make money. This reductionism in the secular left that says that you women, anybody in a family is not contributing to the family unless you're bringing money in. It's despicable. It's degrading. It's disgusting. Yes, it's unbiblical, but it's also deteriorating to our culture. And all Harrison Butker was saying to these graduates at a Catholic college, mind you, is that, ladies, you might reach an age in your life where all you've done is make money and you haven't looked at some of the other callings that you have, and you might not be so happy. Take my wife, for instance. She found her calling as a wife and mother. I'd be nowhere without her. Our family would be nowhere without her. He broke down in tears in his love and admiration and overcome with emotion because of what an amazing woman she has been and what she's contributed to the family. And for them to just take that, hear that, and say, well, what about these people have contributed because they bartered in the square in Old Testament Judea and brought in a couple of shekels to the family. There is no comparison. That's the whole point of what Harrison Butker was saying. This is the kind of valuable information that a young person should hear at a graduation, because it does lead to happiness. And we'll get to who's happiest here in a moment. But first, you heard a slander there from Alyssa Farah. I don't think Alyssa Farah saw the whole speech. I think she saw write-ups on the speech. I searched this. Harrison Butker degrading LGBTQ, singling out LGBTQ, isolating LGBTQ people. Do you know what he said? Do you know what the singling out was? He used the word dangerous gender ideology. That's all he said. In fact, here, I'll give you the whole passage here where he ventured into some of the high-profile cultural issues now facing our society and our culture that run contrary to our faith.
Bad policies and poor leadership have negatively impacted major life issues. Things like abortion, IVF, surrogacy, euthanasia, as well as a growing support for degenerate cultural values in media, all stem from the pervasiveness of disorder. Our own nation is led by a man who publicly and proudly proclaims his Catholic faith, but at the same time is delusional enough to make the sign of the cross during a pro-abortion rally. He has been so vocal in his support for the murder of innocent babies that I'm sure to many people, it appears that you can be both Catholic and pro-choice. He is not alone. From the man behind the COVID lockdowns to the people pushing dangerous gender ideologies onto the youth of America, they all have a glaring thing in common. They are Catholic.
All right, now I want to pause here for a moment because this is incredibly important context. Let me remind you again the slander that Alyssa Farah said here about Harrison Butker's speech. Listen.
Phil is this: love your neighbor as thyself. He chose to target the LGBTQ community.
Yeah.
He thought there was a way that you could speak with humility.
All right, so you just heard what he said. He did not target the LGBTQ community. He gave a whole laundry list of cultural issues. He said dangerous gender ideology, but he also talked about abortion as murder. He talked about diversity, equity, and inclusion. He talked about a whole lot of things. But the last part of what he said is the most important part, okay? And this is what's lost on everybody criticizing Harrison Butker. From the NFL to the ladies at The View to that person on your Facebook page whose hair is on fire right now. Listen to the last part of this part of his speech where he talks about these cultural issues: gender, DEI, critical race theory, abortion. Listen carefully.
He is not alone. From the man behind the COVID lockdowns to the people pushing dangerous gender ideologies onto the youth of America, they all have a glaring thing in common. They are Catholic.
Did you catch it? Did you hear it? He didn't isolate LGBTQ individuals. He didn't isolate anybody who's got an abortion. He didn't isolate anyone who subscribed to it. He's talking about Catholics in leadership roles, from Anthony Fauci to Joe Biden to Andrew Cuomo to Nancy Pelosi to Gavin Newsom. These people who profess their Catholic faith and stand up and do things that are contrary to the faith in the public square. This speech is not about abortion. It's not about gender ideology. It's not about critical race theory. It's not about any of those things. It's about bad Catholics. This is a Catholic giving a speech to young Catholics, graduating from a Catholic college, about to embark on a Catholic adult life, and he's saying, don't be a bad Catholic. This isn't about you, Whoopi Goldberg. It's not about you, Alyssa Farah. It's not about you, Sarah Hines. This is a Catholic speaking to Catholics about other Catholics. But it's lost on everybody. Everyone. Deliberately. It's deliberately lost on them, but it's not lost on us. This is a great speech from Harrison Butker, and a little bit more. I almost called him Harrison Faulkner. Harrison Butker. Here, listen a little bit more. Again, notice the podium. Benedictine College. This is a Catholic speech for a Catholic audience about Catholics who were in leadership, who have succeeded at high levels, as these kids in this room hope to do someday, who have then turned their back on their faith. That's what this is about.
This is an important reminder that being Catholic alone doesn't cut it. These are the sorts of things we are told in polite society to not bring up. You know, the difficult and unpleasant things. But if we are going to be men and women for this time in history, we need to stop pretending that the Church of Nice is a winning proposition. We must always speak and act in charity, but never mistake charity for cowardice. It is safe to say that over the past few years, I've gained quite the reputation for speaking my mind. I never envisioned myself nor wanted to have this sort of a platform, but God has given it to me, so I have no other choice but to embrace it and preach more hard truths about accepting your lane and staying in it.
Yeah, that part about always being a Catholic, but always practicing charity and love and humility, that was also lost on everyone. That part of his speech didn't make it onto The View. No, they just used their platform for anti-Catholic bigotry, and ABC News should be ashamed of themselves, comparing the Latin Mass to a cult and radical Islamic extremist terrorists. All right, a little bit more here from our pal Allison Farah.
One thing, if I may add, I don't know if you guys know, I went to a very religious college, and a
Mm.
lot of what he was talking about here is largely Christian Catholic orthodoxy, but he steps further by wading into the political. He took a swipe at Joe Biden. He brought up DEI, which has nothing to do with anything I've ever read in scripture.
Yeah.
And then he leaned really heavily into talking about like the ideal man and being a godly man. An example, missed an opportunity to talk about the man who might be the leader of the free world, Donald Trump, and his many shortcomings.
Yeah, again, Donald Trump doesn't profess to be a practicing Catholic like Joe Biden did. It wasn't political. It was about our faith. And here's and my final word on all of this. Clearly, I had a lot to say. There are hundreds of college commencements that go on every year at this time, and there is a small handful, like literally a handful, like you can count them on one hand, of speeches delivered by people who aren't radical leftists, who are either not liberal or, in some cases, like Harrison Butker, at least culturally conservative. I have no idea how he votes. I can make a guess, but I don't know. But there's so few that actually make the cut and are invited to give speeches like this. And meanwhile, there's hundreds that come from the other direction. And the one outlier gets criticized like this, who gets the NFL is condemning him and gets this whole discussion on The View to call him names and to lie about him. Normally, the kind of person you get at one of these speeches to inspire young people as they're about to start their lives, well, normally it would be Whoopi Goldberg. In fact, I bet Whoopi Goldberg has given many commencement addresses. There she is on The View right there. She's very popular. She's got an EGOT after all. And it's amazing to me that the biggest criticism that you saw from the women on The View was what Harrison Butker said about his wife. Do you think that a man would ever be moved to tears thinking about the love that he's had for his wife, Whoopi Goldberg, and their decades of devotion after meeting in middle school? Well, I can tell you the answer is no. In fact, Whoopi Goldberg has been divorced 3 times. She's divorced now. And she has said in interviews that she never really loved any of her husbands. So that's the message she could deliver to the young women who are graduating college. She could also talk about the abortion that she administered to herself when she was 14 years old with a coat hanger, and then the subsequent 6 or 7 abortions she had by the age of 25. She can't actually remember the exact number. 6 or 7 by the time she was 25. That would be the inspiring message Whoopi Goldberg delivers to a college graduation, specifically targeting young women about fulfilling their hopes and dreams in the future. I mean, listen, they're both certainly powerful messages to send young women. You could have what Harrison Butker said as he broke down in tears talking about his wife and how incredible she has been on his journey of faith and salvation and the vocation that they share as husband and wife through the sacrament of marriage and being parents of children, and what she has done to contribute to their household and family. And he would be nothing without her, as he fights back the tears. That's one message to send women coming out of college. Or, you know, I've never loved any of the husbands that I've divorced, 3 of them now. And I've had 6 or 7 abortions after my first one at 14. Not sure how many. Absolutely 2 legitimate messages. You go ahead and choose your fighter, will you? I know which one I want on my side. Let me ask you a question. Do you think your savings can weather an economic storm? Think about what you've already put away for the future right now. You know that inflation can render cash worthless. Real estate can also crash like it just did in 2008. Economies built on a mountain of debt can fall like a house of cards. There are very few physical assets you can invest in that can stand the test of time. Now, gold has withstood as a valued form of money for millennia. It's why people are flocking to it now and why Birch Gold is busier than ever. Through a little-known tax loophole, Birch Gold lets you convert a retirement account, an existing retirement account that you already have. You can convert it into a tax-sheltered IRA in physical gold. And the best part is it doesn't cost you a penny out of pocket. To learn more, text Larry, L-A-R-R-Y, to 989898. Claim your free info kit on gold. Let me ask you this again. Can your IRA or 401k weather an economic storm? If not, or if you're not even sure, call the people I trust. Birch Gold. Text Larry right now to 989898. Text Larry 989898 and secure your savings today. Well, Mitt Romney gave an interview to MSNBC, and of course, they talked about Donald Trump and the trial, and he's had some very fascinating things to say, especially his deep, deep regret that Joe Biden did not pardon Donald Trump. Yeah, you heard that right. Now, we'll get into that in a moment and his rationale. But first, he had some criticism for those Republicans who went up to show support for Donald Trump up in the Kangaroo Court in Manhattan.
This week, leaders in the Republican Party went up to that trial, stood outside the courthouse, and attacked our legal system. How does that make you feel about Republicans right now?
Yeah, I think it's a terrible fault for our country to see people attacking our legal system. That's an enormous mistake. I think it's also demeaning for people to quite apparently try and run for vice president by donning the red tie and standing outside the courthouse.
Okay, so I'm going to let you finish. There's a lot of Mitt Romney. I know I interrupted early, but real fast here. He should have never accepted the premise of the question. They went up to attack the legal system. Yes, it's wrong to attack the legal system. This was not attacking the legal system. These aren't the people who are marching, calling our system of justice systemically racist and calling to defund the police and stack the courts. And no, that's the left. That's not. This is not the system of justice they're protesting or demeaning. It's this court, it's this judge, it's these charges, it's this DA. And the fact that Mitt Romney can't wrap his brain around that is kind of sad, pathetic, and despicable, but we've become used to that, sadly. But that last thing that he said there, real fast.
I think it's also demeaning for people to quite apparently try and run for vice president by donning the red tie and standing outside the courthouse.
It's demeaning for people to campaign for vice president by donning the tie and standing outside. Hey, Mitt, is this you? Demeaning? It's demeaning to go up there and audition for the job of vice president. That's you, right? That's got to be you. That ain't a lookalike, is it? That's you. That's you having dinner at a Michelin 3-star restaurant in Trump Tower when President-elect Donald Trump was talking to people about possibly being Secretary of State. That's you, man. You feel a little demeaned, do you? Look at that look on Trump's face. Look at that expression. All right, Mitty. Back to what you were saying.
It's just, I'd have felt awkward were I one of those individuals. But I can also say, I think President Biden made an enormous error. He should have fought like crazy to keep this prosecution from going forward. It was a win-win for Donald Trump. If Donald Trump is exonerated.
Is that Joe Biden's job, or is that shouldn't there be a separation?
I've been around for a while. If LBJ had been president and he didn't want something like this to happen, he'd have been all over that prosecutor saying, you better not bring that forward or I'm.
Boy, this is incredibly revealing and quite an admission. Mitt Romney right now is admitting that he knows what we all know, and that is that this thing is highly political. And if Joe Biden wanted to stop this, he could have picked up the phone and stopped it. And of course, we know that to be true. But here's what Mitt Romney hasn't put together, because I guess he just doesn't think about these things. But if Joe Biden could have picked up the phone to his attorney general like Lyndon Johnson and put a halt to all of these cases against Donald Trump, that also means that Joe Biden could pick up the phone, just like Lyndon Johnson, and ordered these cases against Donald Trump. You can't have one without the other, Mitty. Sorry. And he's admitting it. He's admitting it right there, that this thing is political, and Biden could have stopped it. Also, I love this whole, it's win-win for Trump either way. Yeah, where the hell were you a year ago? You know, now you see the polls. Now you see how it's playing out. Now you learn the facts about how highly politicized these cases are and what a complete clown show the prosecutors are in Manhattan and Fani Willis in Atlanta. Now it's easy afterwards to say, oh, this was always going to be win-win either way for Donald Trump. But he wasn't saying that then, was he? All right, a little bit more here.
I'm going to drive you out of office.
But I'm pretty sure you support having separate but equal branches of government.
I do, but I also, let me tell you, I mean, you may disagree with this, but had I been President Biden, when the Justice Department brought in indictments, I would have immediately pardoned him. I'd have pardoned President Trump. Why? Well, because it makes me, President Biden, the big guy, and the person I pardoned, the little guy. And number two.
We'll get to number two in a minute. But I got to tell you, this is, I got to tell you, one of the most heartbreaking things for me in my modern political life is the last 12 years watching this man so diminishing himself, in my view, in the view of so many Americans, so many Republicans that supported him. Think about it. It was 12 years ago when he secured the nomination. And I was so ready for him to beat Barack Obama. And it is just heartbreaking to see where he is right now. Understand what he just said. This is a guy who always says character is the most important thing. Character above all else, even above policy. Character, character, character. This man, the champion of character, just said that the president of the United States should have used the awesome power of the political pardon. Excuse me. The awesome power of the judicial pardon for purely political purposes. If I were President Biden, I would have pardoned Donald Trump because he was innocent, because the charges are bogus, because this is unconstitutional, because this is a bad precedent to set, because no former president ever had to face something like this, because there's no actual law that was broken, certainly in the case of the Atlanta charge, or in the case of the Manhattan charges. You know, all the reasonable reasons why you should pardon somebody, because he's suffered enough, because he's repentant, because of all of the reasons why a president would pardon somebody. He disregards all of them. He thinks Joe Biden, if I were President Biden, I would have pardoned Trump. Why? For purely political purposes, to make me look good, to diminish Trump, and to keep him from having a victory. That, I gotta say, I mean, listen, I respect the honesty, but that's despicable. It's despicable that Mitt Romney, a man who could have been president and who has been a senator for the last 6 years, that Mitt Romney views the power of the pardon through purely political lenses. I mean, that's how a Democrat thinks, so okay.
It's not going to get resolved before the election. It's not going to have an impact before the election. And frankly, the country doesn't want to have to go through prosecuting a former president. I think the American people have recognized that President Trump did have an inappropriate affair with someone who was a porn star. I think they realized that. I think they realized he took classified documents.
Hold on. There's no reason to have this trial because the American people already know that he had an inappropriate relationship with a porn star. First of all, the only person who is claiming that is the person who has already perjured herself twice on this, because once she said it never happened. Now she's saying it did happen. But of course, the story she's telling about how it did happen is different than the first story she told 6 years ago about how it did happen. But set all of that aside. He's not on trial for having a sexual relationship with a porn star. That's not illegal. But boy, again, Mitt Romney gives away the store. Mitt Romney reveals exactly what this is all about, and he knows it. So where was he? He didn't say, hey, the American people already know that he falsified financial records having to do with the payment of a non-disclosure agreement to a porn star, because that's what he's on trial for. So when these charges were brought and the trial began, why didn't Mitt Romney say, this is ridiculous? There's no crime here. This is just Democrats trying to drag Trump through the slime by having everyone know that he had an illegal or inappropriate relationship. What Mitt Romney is revealing all by himself here about everything is absolutely stunning. Usually politicians don't say and reveal all of this out loud. but he is doing it, and he thinks he's on the right side of these issues. He has no idea what he's doing here.
He shouldn't have and didn't handle them properly. I think they understand that as well. That they realize he's been lying about the election in 2020. They know those things. So these things are not changing the public attitude. And frankly, we got to get beyond these and focus on the big issues that really matter to the American people: our inflation, our border, what's happening around the world, America's involvement in the world. And I think President Biden and President Trump would do best focusing on the future for this great country.
Well, Donald Trump is focusing on those issues. Actually, it's the Democrats on the left and your pals in the media, like that woman sitting across from you on MSNBC, who are just focusing on the trials, Mitt. But listen, hey, glad that he said all of that, because it's good to have him on the record about it. Just, completely hypocritical and sadly beyond politics. A little bit more from Mitt Romney here and his interview on MSNBC.
People have been screaming about the border for all 3.5 years Joe Biden has been president, and he has not done anything to solve the problem at the border. That's a huge issue for President Trump. I can't understand why President Biden didn't tackle this from the very beginning.
Hold on. Tackle it from the very beginning. He caused it from the very beginning. I can't understand why Joe Biden hasn't done anything. Oh, he's done something. He reversed everything that Trump had put in place, and he's caused the problem. And then they're going to bicker back and forth. Stephanie Ruhle is going to, again, take up the Democrat talking point that, well, there was a bill that came out of the Congress.
Congress done, because it's Congress who sets the laws.
Well, the Republicans have put forward our plan. The House put out a border plan. And that's what Congress did. The president said, no, that wasn't acceptable. Then they began working on a bipartisan basis. But you know what? This was not a problem when President Trump was president. The reality is,
the border has been a problem for years, sir. And a plan was just put together, and it was Donald Trump, who's not currently in office, who blocked it.
Yeah, he blocked the plan in part, I'm sure, because he wants to keep this issue hot and alive for his election. But don't forget, when he was president, he did a lot of things that sounded pretty ugly, but we didn't have anywhere near the number of people that have come into the country illegally as we have under President Biden. And that's something he should have done everything in his power. Frankly, take some actions that maybe the courts would have stopped. Then he'd have had a better argument saying, hey, Congress needed to act. But he never did that. And as a result, the American people are saying, hey, I want something else.
He's so close. He's so close, except for that lie that Donald Trump blocked it because he wanted the issue for the election. No, he blocked it because it wasn't going to solve the problem, and it was going to tie his hands once he became president, where he's really going to solve the problem. No, the border has not been a disaster for years. In fact, it was finally under control during the 4 short years that Donald Trump was in office. He's so close to getting it, and yet he refuses to because he's just blocked by his visceral hatred of Donald Trump and his desire to be the guy that everyone at the MSNBC studios love. Oh, you're one of the good Republicans. Now, boy, they hated him back when he stood in the way of Barack Obama's second term. And he still doesn't get that either. A little more.
It's to someone like me, it's unimaginable that in the party of Ronald Reagan and George Herbert Walker Bush and George W. Bush and John McCain and others, that we would see a growing isolationism within our party. I think it flows in part from talk TV, talk radio, the Tucker Carlson of the world. That
Never heard of him.
Exactly. That say outrageous things, and the base says, yeah, exactly. And so many in our party have followed that populist streak, which is, hey, stop worrying about the rest of the world. Just worry about what's going on here. What they're forgetting is that we are connected to the rest of the world, that our economy is connected to the rest of the world, that if we'd have had that attitude, then Germany would have ended up ruling the world. All right, we're involved in the world out of our own self-interest. I laugh at the phrase America first. I know it typically means, isolationism, but really, America is putting ourselves first when we're involved in the world, when we stop bad people. Look, if Vladimir Putin goes not just through Ukraine, but then decides to go into Poland, then we're involved in conflict with our sons and daughters going to war. Or we could walk away from NATO, in which case Putin is going to keep on going and going. How about a world where China and Russia control the world and we have our own little island? That's not a world where Americans are going to be safe or prosperous. We're safe and prosperous when the world follows the orders that have existed over the last 75 years with a strong NATO, strong allies, strong friends, and where America stands for something like freedom.
Boy, he was really close to saying the new world order or the world orders. And he said the orders. Take that out of your vocabulary. It's creepy as hell. Imagine a world where China and Russia are working together. That's the world that Biden's policies have created. That wasn't a world that we had when Trump was in there. I laugh at America first. We're putting America first. But, it's a fascinating little exchange there where he said, everyone says, why are you worrying about Ukraine? Why don't you worry about us here at home? But see, by taking care of Ukraine, we are taking care of ourselves at home. That's an interesting response. And I understand where he's coming from. But hear me out for a second, Mr. Romney, Senator Romney, excuse me. Because listen, you've been a governor, you're a senator, you ran for president. Obviously, you know this stuff a lot better than I do. But once in a while, I think I'm pretty good at putting words together and coming up with, some kind of what way of making an argument. Communicate. Hear me out. Imagine if the American people said, why are we spending all this money and putting all this focus on Ukraine? Why don't you take care of the problems here? Instead of saying, shut your mouth because helping Ukraine ultimately helps us. Instead of saying that, which is basically what you've been saying. Instead, how about you say this? We will take care of the problems here, and we'll be able to help Ukraine. Could you try that? Could you try? Because all we ever hear, and by the way, this isn't just conservatives. I remember during 20 years of war in Afghanistan, I remember Barack Obama running for president against John McCain, saying we're spending money building roads and schools in Afghanistan when the roads and schools in America are deteriorating. And guess what? He was right. And the answer is always the same. Shut your mouth. We know what we're doing. This is important. And it never occurs to any of these conservatives that maybe the right answer is we should be building roads and schools here too. We should be protecting our border, not just Ukraine's border. With them, it's one or the other. Why can't it be both and? Because that truly is a pretty tangible America first, isn't it? He had one other thing to say that actually is even more revealing than anything else during this interview. If you're wondering what Mitt Romney's plans are when he leaves the Senate coming up this January, this may be a clue.
And if they can't trust
Can you think of an example of a Democratic president who tried to hold up the certification of the newly elected Republican?
I'm not enough of an historian to be able to go back.
I know you know the answer to that.
I know there were a number of senators and Congress people that tried to hold up the certification of state electors in the past. So that had happened before. It was squashed, and it was squashed in 2020. I presume that will be again. I hope so. Our institutions held, but you can't be 100% confident that they'll hold again. Look, there's no question, but that when you have a person running for president who is not willing to say, I believe the outcome of an election, that's a threat to democracy. And when you weaken our judicial system, when you weaken the FBI, these are things that strike at the heart of democracy. And that's one of the reasons we're fighting as hard as we are to shore up these institutions, tell people the truth about them, and hopefully have folks listen to folks like you to understand what's at stake.
There you go. American people need to know what's at stake here. So I hope they watch more MSNBC. Speechless. Absolutely speechless. But I hope Mitt Romney enjoys his second career, or at this point, probably his fifth or sixth career, as a political analyst on MSNBC. He's going to be great on Meet the Press. I'm so excited to see that. Election night with Mitt Romney giving analysis with Chuck Todd and Rachel Maddow is going to be brilliant. In fact, if you blur your eyes a little bit and squint, he and Rachel Maddow have the same hairdo. So there's that. Representative Dan Goldman is probably one of the most despicable members of Congress, and boy, is that saying something. Boy, oh boy. But he's a freshman out of New York. He's a rich guy with the fortune of the Levi Strauss Company in his back pocket. He's in a safe district in New York, so he'll never lose re-election. And so he's the pit bull. He's the attack dog. He's the one that they send out because it doesn't hurt him politically. He can say the most outrageous, despicable things, and it doesn't matter. This used to be Adam Schiff's job because his district was like Burbank, Hollywood, Glendale, California, again, a safe district. But now he's trying to win statewide. And yes, even in California, you have to act a little less crazy to win statewide. So now it's Goldman's job. He goes out there, and he and Elise Stefanik, one of the shining lights for the Republicans in the House of Representatives, they sort of went at it here as Goldman was making outrageous, disgusting charge after outrageous, disgusting charge about Donald Trump, about the Stormy Daniels trial, about Michael Cohen, about Republicans in the House. And right when he was done, it was Elise Stefanik's turn on the committee. So watch what happened.
Know that coming down here, outside of that courtroom, while that witness is on the stand to try to impeach his credibility and his testimony, is jury tampering. You know it is unethical. You know that you are trying to discredit a current witness at a current trial who is testifying right now outside of that courtroom. You know better, and it is shameful. Mr. Trustee, you and I worked together at the Department of Justice. We had a number of interactions related to organized crime. I had no idea what your politics were. I imagine you had no idea what my politics were, because it doesn't matter. And it's very interesting to hear you now nitpick about the Speedy Trial Act and about what you claim to be unprecedented conduct in Mar-a-Lago. But I'm confident that you never came across anyone who refused a request to voluntarily return classified materials, who refused to comply with a subpoena for those classified materials, who was found to intentionally conceal and hide and obstruct justice by concealing those classified documents. You've never come across, that is unprecedented, I am certain, because that is a clear predicate for a search warrant. When someone obstructs justice, refuses to comply with the subpoena, and Mr. Issa can make up all of the facts that he wants about declaring it to be classified because he thought it or whatever it is, that will be decided in court. All of these cases will be decided in court by a jury based on the facts, evidence, and the law. And all the Republican majority is trying to do here today is lawfare, is interfere in ongoing criminal investigations that our system is perfectly well equipped to handle. And I yield back.
Yeah, he yields back. All right, so at the very beginning there, he was railing against Republicans who went up to Manhattan. You heard that, and saying that they were engaged in jury tampering. You know, Michael Cohen goes on TikTok every night, raises money by saying whatever the hell he wants. And of course, the jury can see all of that. But a sitting member of Congress say, you know, there's no law that's been broken here, that's jury tampering by delivering. By the way, how was his remarks just now not jury tampering? How is everything? And by the way, another thing, Representative Goldman actually has been coaching Michael Cohen, the witness for the prosecution. He's been working with him to coach him for his testimony, but that's not tampering with the trial in any way whatsoever. All right, so he rails into Republicans going up there. That's outrageous. That's disgusting. That's undermining the judicial system. That's jury tampering. You knew what you were doing. That's awful. Elise Stefanik's turn coming up next. Now watch what she had to say and watch how she meticulously devastates everything that Goldman, his party, and this kangaroo court is trying to do.
The gentleman yields back. I now recognize Ms. Stefanik
for 5 minutes.
Oh, I love being able to respond to the novice from New York. First of all, thank you so much for stating the obvious that political lawfare is in fact election interference. That's what we're seeing with the sham Alvin Bragg trial. Thank you also to the novice freshman member for New York, highlighting that withholding military aid to an ally for a political purpose, just like Joe Biden is doing to Israel. Always grateful for you stepping in it. Mr. Costello, in your opening statement, you said that in the over 50 years serving as a lawyer, you, quote, have never seen the types of politically motivated cases that have been brought in this presidential election season. These political cases are being used as a weapon of war to damage, defeat, or impede political adversaries and their allies. Instead of political warfare, it is lawfare, a cancer upon our collective judicial system. I want to begin with Alvin Bragg's weaponized sham trial in New York. Isn't it true that in Alvin Bragg's campaign for Manhattan DA, Bragg specifically ran on going after President Donald Trump?
That is true.
Isn't it true that Bragg's predecessor, Cy Vance, declined to prosecute President Trump?
That is true.
And the FEC also did not prosecute President Trump.
That is true.
And the DOJ did not prosecute President Trump in this case.
The DOJ referring to the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District?
Correct.
Absolutely true.
And one of the reasons the Southern District of New York turned down this case was because the supposed star witness, according to Alvin Bragg, Michael Cohen, was totally, quote, unworthy of belief. Isn't that true?
Without a doubt.
This is the same Michael Cohen who pled guilty to 7 counts in an indictment that had absolutely nothing to do with President Trump and actually predated the first time he met President Trump, correct?
Absolutely true.
And in fact, this is the same Michael Cohen who perjured himself to Congress. Isn't that true?
Yes.
In fact, when called as a witness in this sham trial, Cohen was asked directly if he was honest during his testimony to Congress. He said no, admitting perjury. But it's not just Bragg's case that is a total sham and illegal political lawfare going after Joe Biden's top political opponent, Donald Trump. This rot goes deep all the way up to the top in the Oval Office. Because when Congress referred this admission of Cohen's perjury to Joe Biden's DOJ, isn't it true that the DOJ has refused to prosecute?
That is true.
Isn't it correct that Michael Colangelo, who was the 3rd highest ranking official in Biden's DOJ, was transferred to Bragg's office to run this weaponized prosecution of President Trump? Isn't that true?
Not only true, but it's unheard of.
Unheard of. It's a disgrace. Do you agree that this weaponization of lawfare goes straight to the top with the purpose of helping Joe Biden's failing presidential campaign?
The circumstantial evidence definitely supports that.
And the unconstitutional gag order on President Trump from New York Judge Merchan is unprecedented lawfare.
As far as I know, absolutely.
And let's go to the daughter of the judge. Isn't it true that she is raising millions of dollars off of this sham case?
Well, I have to say I've read that in the media. I don't know it of my own knowledge.
It is true.
Thank you.
One additional question. I want to talk about the rigged and unprecedented jury selection process. Isn't it true that Bragg's team asked the jurors if they followed Trump on social media?
Yes.
And isn't it true that they did not ask any of the potential jurors if they followed Biden on social media?
Or Michael Cohen.
Or Michael
Yes.
Cohen.
Yeah.
And isn't it true that 87% of the jurors said they voted for Joe Biden?
That's true.
Is this unprecedented and lawfare jury shopping?
Without a doubt.
Without a doubt. Political lawfare for the purpose of election interference to go after Donald Trump. Do you agree?
Totally.
This is one of the reasons that Trump's polls continue to skyrocket. And it's why President Trump will win in 2024 to end the illegal and warped weaponization of the justice system. Because if they can illegally go after Trump, they can go after anyone. I yield back.
I yield back. I yield back. I think what she meant to say is, hey, Congressman Goldman, did you hear all that? Now go yourself. I think that's what she meant to say by yield back. That was a master class. Every single Republican on Capitol Hill in the House or in the Senate should watch this. That's how you use your time effectively. Not all of this pontificating and speaking about this and that and the this and the, and oh, my good friend, the respectful and my dearest colleague over at the, no. You need to get information out there. Yeah. Isn't it true that this happened? Isn't it true that that happened? Isn't this true? Isn't that true? That's how you get testimony from somebody. That's how you get things in the record. That's how you make your point. That was freaking brilliant. You know, there's a lot of people on the so-called short list for running mate for Donald Trump right now. And yes, the Congresswoman from New York, Elise Stefanik, is on that list. There's a couple of other women that are on that list too, but I'm told that he is considering a woman specifically because he's doing poorly right now with suburban women, specifically white suburban women. She looks like a white suburban mom. She's not all va-va-voom with the hair and the makeup and the injected lips and looking like a Fox News pundit babe. She just looks like a mom. She also went to an Ivy League law school and she knows her shit. And she does not hesitate to use her brilliance, to use her position, and to use her talents to go after the political enemies of President Trump, of the Republican Party, of the conservative movement, and of our nation. I mean, if we all have a vote in who Trump chooses, I got to tell you, she's starting to win me over right there. That was a great moment. It was incredible. And at the end with the, I yield my time, there's nothing more to say. That's it. She dropped the mic. Drop the mic. Brilliant. That's it for today. We'll be back tomorrow. Same time, same place. In the meantime, my name's Larry O'Connor. You can call me Larry.